I struggled for a long time trying to improve at chess. I was stuck at a very low rating, losing so many games, until I finally discovered a new way of playing chess. And the moment that I started using this new strategy, I immediately saw improvement in my games. I won the club championship multiple times, and I even ended up becoming more than 2200 rating online. And in this video, I'm going to teach you exactly what I did so you can do the same and become a stronger chess player immediately. So first of all, what we need to do is we need to understand that strong chess players don't play chess based on intuition. They don't make a move because the move feels good to them, or because the move looks good to them, or because they saw it somewhere on a YouTube video in a similar position. No. Strong chess players have a thinking system, a list of steps that they go through during their game. And this is the big shift that I want you to make. Instead of just feeling nervous like, oh no, it's my time to make a move, my clock is ticking, what did my opponent do? No, we have to stay calm and we have to use a structure, a thinking system, and that is going to massively improve your chess. So that is what I will be teaching you here. The thinking system that I will teach you will be something that you can use no matter what opening you play. With white, I always play a setup very similar to this, which is the Pegasus system opening, my own opening system that I always play. But you don't need to feel like you need to play this, because what I am about to teach you, as I said, you can use it no matter what opening you play. Basically, the most important thing in the opening is that we just want to put a pawn in the center, protect it with a different pawn, develop some of our pieces, which means move them off the starting square, and then we want to castle or king. That's what I want to do for the opening. I do it in this particular way. You can do it in a different way. All right. And then the moment that we have castled, this is where most people get lost, because the first couple of moves, they are still quite easy, but this is where we need to come up with a plan. And this is where most people think, oh yeah, maybe this pawn move looks good, or this rook move looks good. Let me play that. No, we need to use a thinking system to determine which moves we are going to play. And the thinking system that I'm going to use to teach you is the CCTO thinking system, which stands for check, capture, threat, optimize. And I will explain in detail how you can start using this. And if you start using this, you are going to see massive improvement in your play. So before we even think about what we are going to do, we need to learn to sit on our hands, which means that every time my opponent makes a move, I'm always first looking at what they just did. They moved that bishop. Okay, why did they do this? I'm not really sure. They probably just wanted to develop a piece. What I always do is I don't just use this thinking system for myself, I also use it for my opponent. So what I will usually do is I will look, imagine if black got to make another move. Do they have a check? No. Do they have captures? Yes, they have some captures, but everything is pretty well protected. Do they have a threat? No. Not really. Okay, then it's my turn to make a move. And then I go through the same steps. Do I have a check? Yes, but it doesn't work, because we would be losing the bishop. Do I have a capture? Yes, but we would just be doing, I will actually show you, we will just be doing an equal exchange. So no reason to do this. Do we have a threat? A threat would mean attacking something that is unprotected, or attacking a high value piece with a low value piece, or threatening a checkmate, something like that. And we don't really have any threats here. The only threat we could think about maybe would be queen b3. Attacking this pawn, but I know from experience that this is somewhat of a poisonous pawn. If you take it, let's just say for example this, if we take it, we will be in trouble. For example, rook b8, and then the queen is already somewhat stuck for squares, and the queen can even get trapped. Like right here, the queen would already be trapped. So we have to be careful that we don't fall for that trap. So since I don't see a check, capture, or threat, I will need to optimize. What does optimize mean? We want to improve our position. Okay. And there are many ways to improve our position. My biggest focus is, can I improve my pieces? So I would like to get this dark squared bishop in the game. It's not going to become active here. It might become active here. on the b2 square. So this is something that I will play. I will play pawn to b3 so that I can make my bishop more active. My opponent did something that I already expected. They moved the knight here. And what I want you to do in your next game is to use this thinking system. So look at your opponent's move and think, do they have a check or capture? Yes, or a threat that they can play. They have a capture. Since they have a capture, we need to solve this. So I'm just going to move back my bishop, which solves that problem. So we are perfectly fine, okay? And they just move back the knight. If they didn't, I would have probably attacked their knight and forced them to move, okay? Since their last move didn't really cause us any troubles, I want to think about my own plan. Check, capture, threat, optimize. So our check still doesn't work. Captures don't do anything. We don't really have a threat. I am looking into potentially playing the move queen c2. Then we would have this beautiful bishop and queen battery that could do a checkmate. The only problem is this annoying knight can just go back and forth between c6 and b4, attacking my queen or my bishop multiple times. So let us just play a3, which this move a3 stops them from jumping into that square so that we can play queen to c2 and potentially set up a checkmate threat here on this square. In the future, not immediately, but this is a good example of optimizing one of our pieces. My opponent is not really doing anything, so we can just continue with our plan. There is no check, capture, or threat that really works, so we need to optimize. So let's do what we said that we were going to do, and let's activate our bishop on this diagonal. Okay, the opponent plays b5. What is this doing? It attacks my pawn. Then I take back, then maybe they take, and then I take. Let me just show you one example of this. For example, they take, I take, they take, and then I could take in multiple different ways. I probably would do it with my knight. So is this a problem? Do we need to deal with this right now? No. So we will continue with our own plan. One of the best optimization plans that you could go for, which is what I am trying here, is to get more pawns to the center. So especially this e4 pawn. I would like to get this e4 pawn to the center. I could probably already do it, but I also like preparing it as much as possible. So I am going to play rook to e1 to support this potential pawn push. My opponent pushes here, okay. Is this doing something? Well, they could take here, but I would take back with my bishop. Let me show you again. Imagine if we play e4. They could take here, I would take with my bishop. They could take, I would take, and nothing is really going on. So we don't have to worry about this. So let's continue with our optimization plan. We want to get 2 pawns to the center. Okay, now we have to deal with this because they do have a threat. So let me just take, take, take. This is just an exchange. And at the end of this exchange, we just end up with a rook on an open file, a file where we don't have a pawn. So this is actually an improvement for us. This rook is now putting pressure on the a6 pawn. All right, they capture my e4 pawn. That's not a problem. We already prepared this with many of our previous moves. All right, let's just capture back. So far, things have been going great. We have been following our strategy. And not a single move so far was a move that I played by intuition. There was a plan, there was a strategy behind every move. And slowly we are creating a winning position by using this strategy. I know that I am already strategically winning here because of pawn islands. So that is what I want to explain here. And of course, we have to also watch out that our queen is under attack, but I'll solve that in just a second. If we look at my pawns, you can see that I have 2 pawn islands, one on the right and one on the left. Great. If I look at my opponent's pawns, well, they have this one, then they have this one, and then I would probably consider this to be 1 pawn island because, yes, they can still be connected with each other. So we have 2 pawn islands, they have 3 pawn islands, which means that we are strategically better. Because in the end game, they will struggle because many of their pawns can be attacked by my pieces, and one of those pawns, maybe 2 of those pawns are going to collapse, and then I will have a winning endgame. It's just a small advantage, but I could already use that to win the game. My queen is under attack. Let me move it. Which square is best? I think f4 could be interesting, putting pressure here. But I also think e3 could be interesting because we still keep pressure on the e6 pawn. Some of these moves, like for example here moving the queen, it's not like there really is one most optimal move as long as we do move the queen. But it is important that we realize we have to move the queen because we are paying attention to what they are doing. All right. They just played queen here. Again, check capture threat. While they have a serious threat, they are attacking my rook. So let's move back the rook. The reason that I go to this square and not all the way back is because we have an open file. So what I am thinking about is how can I double up rooks on this file? And if I want to get the other rook there, I don't want this rook to be blocking that. Okay, what does this queen move do for them? It attacks something, but it's not a problem. Everything is well protected. I don't have a check, capture, or threat. That really helps. The only threat I could actually consider before I go too fast is c5. C5 would be a threat. We are attacking a queen, but it's a very simple threat. They just move the queen forward, and I don't achieve anything. And I also gave myself this pawn, which is a backward pawn, which is not what I want. So let me just develop my bishop. By the way, the reason that I call this a backward pawn is because this pawn is one that's no longer protected by any other pawns, and it also cannot go forward. And you don't want to give yourself any backward pawns. Okay, so knight to b4 attacks my rook, and it attacks my bishop, so we need to do something. The bishop is already well protected, so we are just going to move the rook. Maybe we won't be doubling up on this file, but then we will doubling up on the d file. In any case, at some point we are going to get a winning position. Okay, they attack my queen, no worries, we go back and we actually set up that checkmate threat again, and now they need to try to deal with this, which they do by exchanging a knight for my bishop, so we can just take back. And you can see so far that still I am just using my strategy. I am using CCTO to figure out my moves. I am not guessing. I have a structure. And as long as you follow the structure, at some point you are going to win something. Because your CCT, your check capture threat, will reveal some type of tactic, like a puzzle, in your game. And so here they attack my queen, and this is the moment where we can win something. Queen takes e6, a capture with a check. And after they take back, we have rook takes e6. And just like this, we are already up a pawn. So that is great. They take here. I can capture back with the pawn or with the rook. I will do it with the rook because I want to keep my pawn structure intact. So very important. We already won one pawn. That's great. And we also still have a strategic advantage. Because if you look at this, I have still barely moved my pawns. It's still this same structure with two islands. And my opponent still has this, and then I would still consider this to be one pawn island because technically they can connect all of the pawns together. And we are up a pawn, and they also have more pawn islands, which always means that this will be a winning endgame. My opponent also just offered us a trade of rooks. Should we trade rooks? Well, we should only trade rooks if we know that we are going to be winning this endgame. Will we be winning this endgame? Yes. Why? We are already up a pawn, plus we have the better pawn islands. So that's great. This is a very important moment, because if I don't pay any attention, and let's say that I just move one of my pawns, because like it looks nice, the pawns are connected, that would be game over instantly. I would be back rank checkmated. And this shows that you have to use this strategy. Sit on your hands first, look at what they are doing, and solve it if you need to solve it. So let's just move the king. That solves all problems. And now we can just continue. How should you win an endgame like this? Well, there are actually multiple ways to win an endgame like this. First of all, my opponent has multiple weak pawns. So attacking them with my rook would be great. I could maybe win some pawns. The second thing is that in these endgames, what you would like to do is you would like to create a passed pawn. That is a pawn that can be pushed to promote. Since we have 3 pawns here, and they only have 2 pawns here, this means that we will be able to push, and eventually the 3 versus 2 will turn into us having a passed pawn. So that is the strategy. We can get these pawns into motion, and I want to see if I can create a passed pawn. All right. They just moved the king here, which actually now this pins this pawn to the king. So we could do multiple things. We could continue trying to maybe get the rook here, see if we can push on pawns. But I could also attack this one because they just pinned it. Like, they cannot even capture this because they are pinned, which means that we can take. And doesn't really matter what they do. Imagine if they take with the rook, I would just be trading rooks. And now we simply have a pawn up endgame with kings on the board, which is winning. And if they take with the pawn, then that's also fine, because now their pawn, I don't even know if I have enough colors for this, like red, blue, I think I have green as well somewhere, doesn't really matter. I think I have green, let's see. Yeah, I have green as well. They have 4 pawn islands. That's not good. We also, by the way, messed up the pawns a little bit, but we gave them 4 pawn islands, so we are still better. Instead here they push. They push, which is interesting. It's interesting because then that way they can pick up this pawn without having to mess up their pawn islands. But it also gives us a great move to play. The more pawn islands your opponent has, the easier it will be to win a pawn. Look at this move, rook to e6. We just attacked, they are moving so quickly, we just attacked 2 pawns at the same time. That's the principle of 2 weaknesses. They can only solve one problem, so we are picking up the other pawn. And this is how these endgames are supposed to go. If you have less pawn islands than your opponent, you will just be picking up pawns. Yes, we might also lose a pawn here and there, but we will just be picking up pawns. And we will be slowly going into a winning endgame. We are already up 2 pawns at this point, and that means that we are just completely winning, but we still have to turn this into a win, which is what I will be teaching you. So, what do you think about in these positions? Still, we want to attack those final pawns. That's what we want to do. And we want to create a passed pawn by pushing these. I will play rook a6 because this cuts the king off from a big part of this chessboard. So basically their king is now very passive. It's stuck on those first 2 ranks. They attack my pawn, which I expected. Now I can protect my pawn and also attack their pawn at the same time. And it might look like we are not making any progress, which would not be true, because we are actually making progress, since their king is stuck and it is defensive. They always have to keep an eye on this, because otherwise we will be using these 2 pawns. And we should not forget that we still have a final piece left. We have our king, which we can also use. We can use the king to attack this rook, and then eventually we also want to start pushing these pawns. This is a bit of a strange move, because by playing this move, they actually allow us to do multiple things. Well, first of all, I could just attack their rook, but second of all, they are allowing me to push, which could lead to a trade, but now we have a passed pawn, finally. We remove the final defender, the final guard that's stopping us from promotion, and we would be making a passed pawn. This is fine. We can do multiple things. I will be keeping an eye on this pawn. I don't want to let them grab everything and then promote. All right, we take with a check. And this is basically the position that I talked about way back at the beginning, that we wanted to have a passed pawn. And that is what this is. This is a passed pawn. It is a pawn that can promote. So that was our goal. Now we can also just try to see if we can pick up that final pawn. Yeah, all right. And now we have a position where we have 2 passed pawns, which is even better. As soon as we reach this, what is our strategy? PPP, push past pawn. That is our strategy. Push past pawn. You don't need to think about much else. We just need to push the past pawn. I won't be giving my rook away for free, that's for sure. All right, I'll just be playing this. And then we will be doing PPP, push past pawn, as much as we can. Yes, they can temporarily block, but that doesn't help, because my king will be getting closer, and I will be attacking their rook. Let's just save my own rook, because we don't want to lose this. Okay, yeah, we can push the past pawn. PPP, push past pawn. If you can push it, you push it, and we slowly bring the king closer and closer, and then we attack this rook. Okay, and they sacrifice the rook, because that's pretty much game over for them. And then this position is very easy to win. First of all, king and rook is enough to give checkmate. We also have an extra pawn, so we could also make a queen if we would want to. So please try using this strategy in one of your own games and drop a comment to let me know how it went.